My name is Susanne Renzo-Vasu. I'm part of the Euraxis ASEAN team. I'm based in Singapore. And today we have really a Euraxis worldwide joint initiative because we are in fact, four Euraxis representatives that are hosting this session today. So maybe if I just briefly introduce you to everyone who is with us today to share their expertise. First of all, my colleague Tomasz, who is based in Korea in Seoul. Tomasz, if you quickly want to wave at us and say hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tomasz. As Susanne put it, I am based in Seoul, Korea, and I coordinate Euraxis project here on the Korean Peninsula. And I am happy to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And from Japan, joining us is Dr. Judith Erika. She is the country representative for Euraxis Japan. Judith, hello.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be part of this initiative, and I'm hoping that it's going to be super useful for all participants and attendees. We are very much hoping for the MSCA Fellowships to take off in Japan much more than in the past. So I would like to invite all of you to submit your applications, and do not be shy, contact us for help. We are very happy to do so. And then later, you can actually provide your testimony in upcoming webinars. So this could actually be you in the coming years. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Judy. And then, of course, my colleague, Dr. Jenny Almaco, she is the IT brains today, so managing all of us. She is currently based in the Philippines, but moving to Vietnam very soon. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, everybody. Have a wonderful session. You will be learning a lot of things. And what is exciting as well, apart from having representatives from the European Commission, is that you have a very strong panel of speakers who are fellows themselves. So learn from them, listen to them, and yes, let's get that proposal going.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jenny. Yes, indeed. We have ahead of us a very exciting session. We have invited, first of all, representatives from the European Commission, Dr. or Mrs. Marlene Bartes, and also Mr. Samy Bettiche. They will in a minute share with us all the details about the 2021 call for application. Now, before I hand over to the colleagues, maybe Marlene, you just quickly wave your hand at us. You're joining us from Brussels. Hi, Marlene, and also Samy. Hello, nice to meet you. And as the colleagues already said, we have assembled a very strong team of fellows. So these are researchers from Singapore, from Korea, from Japan, from other parts of Asia and the world who are either currently carrying out their MSCA funded postdoc, or they have been beneficiaries of this project. And of course, we feel it's very interesting for you to hear from them, to pick their brain, how did they go about the application process, and where has this fellowship taken them in their career development. So maybe just very briefly to introduce you to who is joining us today, we have Dr. Wong Ying-Shi. She is from Singapore, but joining us from Glasgow. Hi, Ying-Shi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ying-Shi. You can call me Ying-Shi. And I wasn't sure about applying initially because I thought that I wouldn't be good enough, but then here I am. So I hope you gain some confidence and submit an application if you feel like it's right for you.
Thank you so much. Then we have Dr. Anurag Krishna. He is from India, but is a PhD holder from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And I think he's joining us from Lausanne in Switzerland.
Yes, indeed. And hello, everyone. A warm good morning. Yeah, I would be more than happy to share all my tips and tricks, for the proposal for all the participants. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, our third grantee is currently in Belfast, Northern Ireland. It is Dr. Yun Kyu Lee. Hello, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Nice to meet you. And I'm great. It's a great honor for me to share my experience for MSCA Fellowships. And yeah, nice to meet you all. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, a fellow who's currently in Japan, but I understand he's just on the move to Slovenia. It is Dr. Norbert Kavasi. Norbert, how are you? Thank you so much for taking the time to join us while you're packing your bags. your microphone is off.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. My name is Norbert. Actually, I'm from Japan, but soon I'm moving to Slovenia as a Marie Curie Fellow. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you very much to give the possibility to share my experience with you.
Excellent. So thank you very much. So you can see we have an exciting panel ahead of us, but let us get started. And I would first of all like to invite Marlene and Samy to share their presentation. Now, before they get started, just a few words on housekeeping. Please do keep your microphones and your cameras off. If you would like to ask a question, we have set aside dedicated Q&A time. If you want to ask a question, just send your question in the Q&A box. And when we have the Q&A session, we will invite you to open your mic and your camera and ask your question, or if you'd like to do it anonymously, we will read it out for you. So without further ado, Marlene, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Susanne. That's better. I don't. Do you all hear the echo?
We do. I think you are in with two
devices. Yes.
Try again.
Okay. No, I still hear the echo.
You would have to turn off the phone, the second machine that you had in. If you just if you're still logged in with the phone, please log out with the phone.
I'm not actually. Okay. This is better. No, it's not better. Let me get a headset. Maybe it will work better. Samy, if you want to start, maybe.
Samy, would you like to start? We can just flick the presentation for you. That's not a problem. So yes. Marlene is just trying to figure out the IT problems. We'll be back with you in just a second.
So yeah, we can start.
Let me try.
Ben, can you run the presentation from your screen?
Yes, I'm wondering if you're hearing me better.
Yes, perfect. Marlene, please,
yeah?
The floor is yours.
Apologies for this then. Okay, so hello from Brussels. And welcome to this Marie Curie session on individual fellowships, or what we call now postdoctoral fellowships. I'm working at the European Commission, and I'm here together with my colleague Samy Bettiche, who works at the Research Executive Agency. And we're going to try to explain a little bit to you what opportunities there are for you to come and do postdoctoral research in Europe. I hope you're seeing this okay. So this is just to give you a brief introduction on what the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions are and the wider picture. So they're part of the Horizon Europe program, which is basically the EU's program for research and innovation. It will be launched very soon, hopefully in May. So everything that I'm telling you today is, of course, subject to the adoption of the program. So it could be that if there are delays in the launch of the program, there might be also some delays for the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, but we're hoping that this is not the case. So if you look at the slide, you see a little bit the structure of the Horizon Europe program. You see that the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions are part of Pillar 1, which is the excellent science pillar. And this is something that we use a lot when we sell the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions. It's really that they are an excellence program. So the successful applicants are really selected based on their excellence. The budget for the MSCA, the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, is more or less 6.6 billion euros for the 7 years of the framework program. So we always work in 7 years. What are the MSCA? I guess some of you are already familiar with it. I'm not gonna stay on this very long, but it's really to develop human capital to tackle, societal challenges or current challenges faced in Europe or beyond. What we're trying to do is equip researchers with new skills and skills needed to advance really their careers. So our program focuses a lot on the training and the mobility of researchers, but it also sets up doctoral programs in Europe, but also we go beyond Europe. So we're talking about international collaboration. You will hear probably a lot in our presentation that we talk about EU member states and Horizon Europe associated countries. So these are the countries that sign an association agreement to be fully part of the Horizon Europe program. So at the same level as, for example, an EU member state. And then we have third countries across the world. Here you just have a little bit the key features of the MSCA, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. As I just said, it's a lot focusing on skills, on career development. It's bottom up. So what we mean by bottom up is that really applicants are free to choose the topics they want to collaborate on. So we're not imposing any predefined topics. It's very international. We're trying to promote a lot cross-sectoral and interdisciplinary mobility. So what we mean by cross-sectoral is, of course, across sectors, so academic and non-academic sectors. So we're trying to really promote the transfer of knowledge between these two sectors. And then interdisciplinary, of course, means between different scientific disciplines. Our actions are very attractive, I think, employment-wise. You will see later on more in detail for postdoctoral fellowships, which, yes, I mean, it's attractive to really entice the brightest people to apply. And then, of course, there's also a big impact on institutions that participate, not only individual researchers. And since we're promoting a lot cross-sectoral collaboration, of course, we involve a lot the industry and enterprises and businesses. These are the main actions of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. So for the next 7 years, today we're going to talk about postdoctoral fellowships. But I think it is important for you to know that if you're looking for postdoctoral positions, you could also be interested in staff exchanges. So the top right, which used to be called Research and Innovation Staff Exchanges, so RISE projects. If you're already employed at a university, for example, then these could also fund the mobility of postdoctoral researchers. And then there's also co-fund at the bottom left. So here as well, we do fund postdoctoral positions. So these will not be the focus of today, but don't hesitate to follow the links that you will have on the final slide of the presentation and to maybe find out more what we offer besides postdoctoral fellowships. Here you have some figures for the past 7 years. So we just finalized that period. You see that we funded over 65,000 researchers worldwide. 37% of these research, 37% come from outside of the EU. So you can see that we're really trying to attract researchers like you to come to Europe and carry out their research activities. The budget for the previous period was 6.2 billion. I just said that for the future period, it would be 6.6 billion, so slightly bigger. With that, we've also developed over 1,000 doctoral programs, which involved over 4,500 companies. So here again, the cross-sectoral aspect is very important, and more or less 42% of all the of the researchers we funded were women, which we are quite proud of. If we look a little bit more at the figures for Japan, for instance, here you can see some numbers. So we funded more or less 200 Japanese researchers to come to Europe, and 700 European researchers going to Japan. The top destination for individual fellowships, which are now called postdoctoral fellowships, was the UK. And yes, and then at the bottom, you just see the number of organizations supported and the ratio of female researchers, which unfortunately is very low. So I hope we have some female researchers in the audience today and that you'll apply for a Marie Curie Fellowship. Here we have the same for Korea, slightly higher female participation. And then you have it here as well for Singapore, where the female participation is actually quite good. So if we move to postdoctoral fellowships, here you'll see a little bit the main objectives. So as I explained before, it's really to foster excellence. We are targeting researchers who hold already a PhD, and we're trying to increase their career opportunities and their skills, of course. What we talk about often is the III, so international, intersectoral, interdisciplinary mobility that I explained quickly below. So between, for instance, the academic and non-academic sector. And yes, this is because we're really trying to encourage researchers to bridge or to go into the non-academic sector to advance their careers. I already mentioned that the MSCA are bottom up, meaning that for the research areas, all scientific fields are open for you to apply. So we're not imposing any research topic. You're really free to choose what you want. And you will see that for postdoctoral fellowships, the key actors will be the host organization or the beneficiary that will host you as individual researcher, and then of course your supervisor at the beneficiary, who will supervise your postdoctoral fellowship. We are today going to focus on European postdoctoral fellowships. So this is to attract any nationality of the world to come and carry out postdoctoral research in Europe. So when I'm speaking of Europe here is, as I said before, EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. So we go beyond just the 27 EU member states. These dates are important, okay? So if you want to apply, the call for Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowships will open on the 18th of May. Of course, this is subject to the timely adoption or launch of the Horizon Europe program. So keep your eyes open in case there is a delay in the launch of the program. It might be that the opening date of the call in 2021 changes. So it could be slightly delayed. But what's most important here for you is actually the call deadline. So by which date you have to submit your application, which is the 15th of September. This date will most likely not change. So you can already aim for that. So September this year. If you're not ready yet to apply this year and you're just considering applying in the future, then the call in 2022 will be more or less the same dates. You see, so 14th of September for the deadline. You also have here an indication of the total budget for the postdoctoral fellowships action, so 242 million euros, and actually 205 million or 206 even for European fellowships. So really the biggest part of the budget goes to European fellowships, which is good for you. So there's more possibilities to receive funding. And then the rest goes to global fellowships. So, you know, fellowships outside of Europe. So write down these dates. If you're not, or if you're applying this year, you're not selected and you're thinking of applying exactly with the same application again next year, be careful, because there will be resubmission restrictions, meaning that if you receive a score below 70%, you will not be able to apply in 2022 with the same, of course, application. So same host, same researcher. But yes, so this resubmission is introduced because actually this action is very popular. So there is a big oversubscription, meaning that more people apply, of course, then we have funding available, which means that the success rate is also unfortunately very low. So it's really a tough competition. So we're trying to reduce a little bit the number of applications that we receive to, yes, to have more positive or bigger numbers in the end. So who applies? The application, so it's a joint application by the researcher, you, and a beneficiary organization. So the beneficiary can be either in the academic or non-academic sector, meaning it doesn't have to be a university or a research organization. The beneficiary has to be a legal entity in an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. So here you see the acronyms, EU member states or Horizon Europe associated country. That's for European fellowships, because, well, you're supposed to come to Europe. So your host institution, host organization will be located in Europe. And it is the beneficiary that signs the grant agreement with the research executive agency. So the beneficiary will have to recruit you or the researchers, the candidates, under full employment contract, which includes normally, of course, social security coverage, etc. So we're talking here of an employment contract with your beneficiary or host organization. And then if we're looking at participation of institutions from outside of Europe, of course, as I said, we're an international program. So third countries can, of course, also be associated partners, meaning they could, for instance, host a fellow or researcher like you during a secondment, during your research. So project, you could do a secondment in a third country somewhere outside of Europe. Eligible researchers. So here a little bit the eligibility criteria for you. So again, I'm focusing only on European fellowships. The good news is that we're really open to any nationality of the world. There are a few conditions, meaning that you have to be in possession of a doctoral degree, a PhD, at the call deadline. So I mentioned the deadlines before, so September 2021 for the first call. So you are supposed to be in possession of a PhD when the call closes. And then another condition or eligibility criteria is that you shouldn't have more than 8 years of full-time. So here we're really looking at full-time research experience after your PhD. There might, of course, be a few exceptions. So if you had a parental leave, maternity period, etc., then this will be deducted from this 8 years of full-time research experience. But yes, so this limitation is also introduced in order to reduce a little bit the number of applications that we receive. And then finally, we also have what we call a mobility rule. So here, be careful. You are not supposed, or you're not eligible to apply if you have resided or carried out your main activity in the country of the beneficiary. So let's say the beneficiary that will host you is in France. You should not have lived in France more than 12 months in the 36 months before the call deadline. And so what we mean here by main activity would be work or studies, for instance. So if you have already been abroad for studies, etc., be careful because we have this mobility rule applying. For the duration, the fellowship in Europe will last between 12 to 24 months. So it's minimum 1 year, maximum 2 years. As I mentioned before, you can do secondments. So it's you going to another organization during your fellowship, if of course there is a clear added value to your research projects. And this could not be more than 1/3 of the total duration of your fellowship. There is now also what we call the additional placement opportunity at the end of the fellowship. So once you've finished, for up to 6 months in a non-academic organization. So non-academic, as I said before, so it has to be something different than a university or research organization. So it could be industry, it could be, an SME, an NGO, etc. So this is really to encourage career moves so that researchers don't necessarily stay in academia, but maybe also consider the non-academic sector. It's to encourage, of course, knowledge transfer between both sectors. If you're interested in this additional placement, it has to be part of the proposal, okay, that you're going to submit in September, because it will be evaluated as well. And then, of course, the organization that is going to host you at the end of your fellowship also needs to sign what we call a letter of commitment. So if this is something you're interested in, please already think about it now, because you will have to include it into your application. Now, if we talk a little bit about money, these are, well, what we call contributions or unit contributions under the postdoctoral fellowship action. You will see that we're splitting it in two. So on the left is the contribution to the researcher, so to you, and we're talking about person months, so per month. And then on the right, the two last columns is a unit contribution for the institution, okay, so for your host organization. I realize that this is in euros, so I just put at the top of the slide a quick conversion into Japanese yen and Singapore dollars and Korean won, so that you can do a quick mental calculation into your local currencies. For the researcher, if we look at the money that goes to the researcher, so we're talking about the living allowance, which of course might vary according to the country you're going to. So we apply what we call a country correction coefficient. So here there might be some variations. But this is basically the base amount used for calculation. We have what we call the mobility allowance. So this is, for instance, for travel or accommodation for private purposes. So of course, if you have to travel in the framework of your research project, then this should be part of the research training and networking contribution on the right side of this slide. There is also a family allowance. So for instance, if you are married or if you have an engagement that is recognized as something like a marriage in your country, if you have kids as well, then you would receive this family allowance. We have also the long-term leave allowance in case, for instance, you have a parental leave, maternity, sick leave, etc., for more than 30 consecutive days. And then we have the special needs allowance. So this is for researchers with disabilities. So of course, it's only if applicable. And then on the right side, you have what I explained earlier, the institutional unit contribution, which goes to your host organization. So they will receive what we call research, training, and networking contribution. For instance, you know, for conferences, etc. And then the management and indirect contribution. So that's really for the management of the project, for instance, you know, personal or human resource costs working on this project. So yes, here you have a little bit an idea of what money we're talking about for one individual researcher per month. Now I will hand over to Samy, who, as I said, works at the Research Executive Agency. So the Research Executive Agency is actually the agency that receives your proposals and that hires the experts to evaluate them. So he will talk a little bit about the submission and the evaluation. Samy, I will pass the slides for you if you want, or... Okay, you have it. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, hello everyone. I will say a word on the practical aspects.
Wait, I think you're in speaker view, so you have to go
in a full slide mode. Yes, we can see the next slide as well.
Okay, full slide mode. Like this.
No.
Are you using two monitors by any chance?
Yes, I'm using two.
Then probably you have to move this to the other monitor.
Sorry for this.
You can also continue sharing if you want.
Okay. Now it should be good, hopefully. Is it fine like this?
Nice.
Yes. Perfect.
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry for this little technical problem. So now a word on submission and evaluation. So basically, once you have identified a host institution, you have an idea, a concept that you would like to submit, then you will need to go to the funding and tender opportunities portal, because all the applications are done online. And from this portal, you will be able to access all the call for proposals that are published for Horizon Europe, which is the research framework program. And from there, once you have identified your call, you will be able to start your online application. So your application is composed of two parts. The part A, this is where you will encode all the information that are related to you as researcher, to the supervisor, and to the host institution. In this part A, you will also reply to some call-specific questions, which will allow us to assess the eligibility of your proposal and whether or not you meet all the eligibility requirements that have been described by Marlene just before. That's the part A. Then you have the part B, which is composed of two parts. The narrative part with a maximum page limit of 10 pages. The the application form is structured along the different award criteria, and it's really important to respect those 10 pages, as any additional pages will be completely disregarded by the experts. So it's quite challenging, but that is the condition, 10 pages. And then you have the part B2, where you will be able to add your CV and all the information about the host institutions. So once you have submitted your proposals, on the 15th of September, we receive all proposals, and it's really important that you stick to the deadline. You can start your application from the 18th of May, where this is the intended date of publication of the call. You can go back anytime to your application online, and it's also really important not to wait the last minute to submit in case you face a technical issue, because if the deadline is on the 15th at 5 p.m., at 5:05, you will not be able to submit your application. So once we receive your application, we, based on the information that you provided in the part A, we go for an eligibility check, where we check that your application is meeting all the eligibility requirements. Once this check on eligibility is done, we allocate your proposal to 3 independent experts that are knowledgeable about the field of your application. To give you an idea, last year we mobilized more than 4,000 experts to assess all the proposals that we have received. So once your proposal has been allocated to 3 different experts, the 3 experts will start drafting an individual evaluation report. And among the 3 experts, one will be appointed as a rapporteur. And the rapporteur will be the expert in charge of guiding the discussions in order to reach a consensus on the comments on your proposal, and a consensus on the score that reflects those comments. And in the end, it will be that score that will determine the position on the ranking list and whether your proposal will be funded or not. As mentioned by Marlene, it is bottom-up program, but in order to organize the evaluation, we have set 8 scientific panels that cover all disciplines. And so we have life sciences, social science and humanities, chemistry, environmental science, physics, mathematics, and economy. So at the end, we will have 8 ranking lists, and you will compete among proposals from your field. And it takes 5 months for us to process the evaluation and to inform all applicants about the results of their application. So by the 15th, if you apply this year, by the 15th of February, you will receive the results of your application and an evaluation summary report commenting on the strengths and weaknesses of your application. The evaluation is done against award criteria. We have 3 award criteria that are excellence, impact, and implementation. Each of those criteria will receive a score out of 5 with decimals, and there will be a specific weighting that is 50% for excellence, 30% for impact, and 20% for implementation. Here, all the 3 award criteria are divided in sub-criteria. For instance, for excellence, your proposal will be assessed against the description of the state of the art and to what extent the proposal proposed to go beyond the state of the art, what extent it is innovative. The methodology will be also assessed. Then the evaluators will look at the supervision and training aspects of the application, and as well as they will look into the knowledge transfer that is proposed, not only the knowledge transfer from those institutions to the researcher, but also to what extent you as researcher will bring your knowledge, your skills to the host institution and to the lab in which you will undertake your fellowship. The evaluators will also assess the impact of the project on the researcher during the project, but also in the long run, to what extent the proposal will give better career prospects and employability to the researcher. Evaluators will also assess the impact of the proposals and how, what are the measures that are intended to exploit the potential results and to disseminate and communicate the results of the projects, not only to the scientific community, but also to decision makers, to civil society, and to the wider public at large. And finally, experts will assess the implementation aspects of the proposal, meaning like to what extent the work plan is coherent, the work packages are well articulated, if all the deliverables and milestones are credible, if there are any risk they should have been identified, and potential mitigation measures should also be described there. And finally, evaluators will also look into the capacity of the host institution. If you have to start an application, there are two main documents that you should look carefully and have next to you all the time. That is the work program that is supposed to be published in mid-May, where you will find all the information about the budget, the call deadline, the type of activities, and the eligibility conditions. And the second important document will be the guide for applicants. That is a document that will guide you through all the application by explaining in more detail what are the eligibility conditions, what type of activities are expected, how the evaluation is organized, and so on and so forth. It's also important that you follow carefully the proposal template, which is articulated around the award criteria, and where you will find all the information about the information that is expected to be found in that application form. You also have the possibility to ask questions anytime through the research inquiry service that is online through the funding and tender portal. Quickly, some very generic tips and tricks. I think the real added value there will be from the testimonials from the fellow that we will hear afterwards. But it might sound obvious and common sense, but it's really important to check the eligibility conditions and what are the different requirements, and that you address all the questions and the evaluation criteria and sub-criteria that are mentioned in the proposal template. It's important also to highlight the EU dimension of your proposal, to what extent it contributes to the European policies and priorities, and to what extent it addresses the different societal challenges. It's always good to have a second opinion. There are lots of expertise available within the host institution, through the international or the administrative department, through national contact points. If you apply, for instance, in France, then you can contact the national contact point from that country. And also, ideally, it's quite good practice to get a feedback from a successful fellow if you have this opportunity to know someone that has been successful in getting the grant in the past. And finally, you can be kept informed about all the developments of the program and the calls, and particularly when the call will be published, through the MSCA website, through the different alumni association, EURASEX, obviously, and through our different social media. So this is it for me. I'm ready to take any question, if any, and I thank you for your attention, and good luck for your application.
Thank you so much, Samy and Marlene, for this introduction to the postdoctoral fellowship, the European postdoctoral fellowship course, meaning that you as applicants from outside of Europe would move to Europe to spend 2 years there working on your research project. Now we have a lot of questions coming in. I want to just read out some of them before we invite some of our attendees today to ask their questions in person. Now, a question that comes up again and again refers to the nationality. Maybe Samy, if you can just quickly summarize who is eligible to apply for this scheme in terms of their nationality, and maybe also if you just say a few words again to summarize on the topics that are available for funding, because our social scientists and humanities researchers are always getting a bit concerned when we talk so much about the natural sciences.
So to reply to the last question, it's open to all fields, any discipline. So whatever the field of the proposal is, it is eligible. There is no eligibility condition that is linked to the scientific discipline. So social science are completely eligible, and it's actually the biggest panel. As I said, we organized the evaluation in 8 different panels, and among which social science and humanities. And this panel is actually the biggest panel in terms of proposal received and funded, with about 25% of proposal received and funded. That was the second question. For the first question about the nationality, here we have to distinguish between the nationality of the host institution and the nationality of the researcher. For the host institution should be located in Europe, meaning in a member state or in a country that is associated to Horizon Europe. But this host institution should be located in Europe. There is always possibilities within the project to have secondment outside Europe, up to 1/3 of the duration of the project. But the host institution should be located in Europe, and it will be the one that will sign the grant agreements. Concerning the researchers, it's open to any nationality. No restriction.
Thank you.
I hope it clarifies.
Thank you. That clarifies. So just to summarize, in terms of the applicant that wants to move to Europe, all nationalities are eligible. So if you're joining us today and you don't happen to be from one of the 3 countries that we're talking about, you're all so eligible. And anyone from the humanities and the social sciences, your proposal is just as valuable and will be considered for funding just as those from your peers in the natural sciences. Now we have more questions from some potential applicants that are wondering about the definition of full-time research experience. Could you maybe give us some understanding on how exactly this is defined?
It's research experience as basically as being employed in a research domain, carrying out research. It's really wide definition, and we are quite flexible in that sense. In terms of full-time equivalent, then you can have been part-time. We will only take those part-time. You can have had a break in your research career. This will not be taken into account. Yeah, I think. Is that clear?
Thank you so much, Samy. We have some more questions, and I'd probably like to invite someone now to ask a question. And I think our first person that wants to ask a question is Raphael Ng. Raphael, if you are now available, I'll hope we can see you.
Thank you, Dr. Renzo Vasu. So my question relates to the mobility rule. And the question here is, if we apply the postdoctoral fellowship in a consortium or partnership of various institutions within a European network, say, for example, one in the UK, one in the Netherlands, and one in Germany, does this mobility rule only apply to the host institution or to all partnered institutions? Because it seems rather restrictive if, say, for example, an applicant has done a PhD in one of these countries and would like to apply to another country for further research. And this rule seems to restrict their research. And also related to this mobility rule, it seems rather restrictive also for applicants with families who are grounded in one of these countries. So how can this be mitigated or accommodated? How do you work with such situations?
We have this clear. First of all, to clarify, it's a mono-beneficiary action. So there is no consortium. It's one host institution and one researcher. So, and then we look at the past. It's a mobility program and it's a European program. So we don't want to fund people that have been, let's say, in France since 10 years and will stay in France for another two years. It's a mobility program and it's a European mobility program. So we encourage and we promote and support mobility. Then the mobility rule is that you could have spent, if you apply to France, then you should not have spent more than 1 year over the past 3 years before the call deadline in France. And whatever you did during those last 3 years will only be looked at through this angle of where you've been living in the country of the host institution, which should not be longer than 1 year over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's important here to specify that the mobility rule applies to the country of the beneficiary organization. So that's one organization, the one that will sign the grant agreement. So if this organization is part of a larger network, and then you might do a secondment during your fellowship in one of the other institutions in that network, that's fine. But you should not have lived more than 1 year in the country that will sign the grant agreement.
Thank you. And what about instances where a researcher does, say, half a year with the beneficiary host institution at site and spends another half a year in another country? Say the country that the person did the PhD in.
So you're talking about the implementation of the project or before? You're talking about the implementation. Okay, so the implementation, you will sign a grant agreement for a project that will be for 2 years and possibly an additional 6 months with the host institution. You could have, if you're in, for instance, in environmental science and you need to go for 6 months in Amazonia to do some field work, it's totally possible. If you need to be seconded you're in France and in Germany or in Denmark, it's possible, but then there is a limitation of it should not be more than 1/3 of the total duration. So it should not be longer than 8 months this year, but it's possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raphael, for your question. Now we only have two more questions, or time for 2 more before we move on. There is a question that comes up again when we're talking about the European host institution. Marlene, Samy, very quickly, can someone still apply with a host institution in the UK, even though they are no longer an EU member?
Yes, I can briefly touch upon that. As I mentioned at the beginning, it has to be either an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. So Horizon Europe associated country means a country that signs an association agreement to be part of the program. We are currently in the process of doing this with the UK. So if everything goes well and they sign in time the association agreement, then the UK would be considered as a Horizon Europe associated country. And then, of course, it would be possible to apply with a host institution in the UK. So the Horizon Europe associated countries go beyond the EU. So for instance, I don't know, like Switzerland, which is not an EU country, is also going to be most likely a Horizon Europe associated country.
Thank you so much, Marlene. And now we will share the slides of this presentation later on, and we will add, of course, a link for you to see which of the countries are eligible as hosts in that particular fellowship. Now, before we move on to talk to our fellows, who I'm sure have a lot of answers to all the questions that you've typed to us. I want to invite just a second person to ask their question. It is Vuk Radulovic. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Vuk, if you're here, please ask your question.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for this session. It's really informative and helpful. I have two very practical questions. First is how we find, as candidates, how we find the institutes. Is there some kind of a base where we can find all the institutes that are searching for candidates to collaborate, or we are personally contacting them on the basis of our need? This is the first question. And the second question, what about the candidates that are in the last phase? For instance, I'm finishing PhD this year. Am I eligible to apply this year for this fellowship, or I need to wait another year and then to apply? Yeah, that would be my practical questions. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll start quickly,
Okay.
and then maybe if you want to continue, Samy, just for the first question on the host organization and how to find them. I think our alumni, so the testimonies that you will hear after us, they will probably explain much better than us how they did it. It depends a lot on your research topic. So I would say it's your responsibility to approach an institution, also a supervisor at this institution based on your research field. Normally what we see is that, you know, the MSCA is very attractive. So any institution usually is very happy to try and apply for postdoctoral fellowships, since in any case, you would be the one mostly drafting the application. So it's you know, only benefits for them. But Samy can maybe complement on if there is some sort of partner search tool, but it's your responsibility to find a host. And just for the application, so what do we mean by you have to be a holder of a PhD at the call deadline? So normally you should have your degree testifying that you accomplished your PhD. However, we also accept the successful defense of your PhD. If you don't yet have the diploma at the call deadline, then we would consider the successful defense of your PhD as a basic requirement if you want. So you should have finished your PhD, defended it successfully, then you're eligible to apply. So I hope that answers. Samy, maybe you want to add for the host institution?
Yes, as you said, like usually it's the testimonials from the other fellows are really useful, and you can see that it's based on a previous relationship with some experienced professor or people that fellows have met in a conference and then kept contact and they decided to develop a new project. In terms of practical tools on the portal, you can also find some institutions that could possibly host you, and then I would let Susan complement. But on your access as well, you have the possibility to find some partner search from host institution that would like to submit an application under the postdoctoral call, and they organize a selection process to find a potential candidate fellow to submit the application. But Susan, you might want to complement that.
Thank you so much, both. I think a lot of these questions will also be answered by our fellows, and I think this is now time for us to introduce them and invite them to share with us why they applied for this particular scheme, how they went about it, and what their advice is for you on how to approach this or to consider this. Just to preempt this, we will have a follow-up webinar training potential applicants on how exactly to approach this application. This will take place in May, and everybody who is joining us right now will receive the information in an email later on, so don't worry about it. But I would now like to turn to our fellows, and they are waiting in the wings to answer your questions. So let us start first of all with a lady who's joining us from Scotland, and she has a fabulous job, I have to say. She's a volcanologist, so she must love traveling to Iceland and to Hawaii, I guess. It is Dr. Wang Yingxi. Dr. Wong, as I said, is a volcanologist. She is originally from Singapore, where she grew up with a great interest in natural hazards, although I have to say nothing ever happens here besides a lot of rain. This is what led her to pursue a degree in earth sciences and subsequently in geophysics. She holds a PhD from the US, from the University of Stanford University, and she is currently a Marie Curie postdoc research fellow at the University of Glasgow, where she's working on computational models to understand the movement of gases in volcanic systems and how these gases control eruptions. So that's super interesting. Dr. Wong, please share with us your impressions.
Well, thanks, Susanna, for that great introduction. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Ying-Chi. You can call me Ying-Chi. And I am, as Susanna said, a volcanologist. And this is a volcano from the Northwest US called Mount St. Helens, which I had done research on during my PhD. So as was in the introduction, I finished my PhD at Stanford last year. And so Stanford's in California in the US, and it was in geophysics. I applied for the MSCA in 2019, where the deadline was in September 2019. So I know that kind of seems a bit contradictory to what the requirements for having the PhD is. So I'm not sure if the requirements had changed, or in any case, by this time I was in the finishing stages and had spent about 5 years at Stanford doing my PhD when I applied for the fellowship. Now I'm at the University of Glasgow in the UK. So before I continue, I'll just give a quick summary of the kind of research that I do. So again, this is a volcano in the Northwest US. If we take a look at the cross-section of a volcano, you might imagine that there's some region where magma, which comes up from the volcano, is stored. And what's interesting about the magma under volcanoes is that it contains all three states of matter. So liquid magma, crystals, solid crystals, as well as gas bubbles. And this affects how magma flows from within its magma storage region underground, and how it flows as it ascends and it comes out and affects the style of eruptions. So in particular, we want to look at how the gas bubbles work, because these are the main drivers of very explosive, destructive eruptions. And so I primarily use computational models to figure out how these bubbles move through the system, whether they are suspended or whether they form channels or whether they are trapped within the magma itself. So I do that using computational modeling. And so why I applied for the MSCA Postdoc Fellowship is that I wanted to do some independent research. And this actually, the research topic that I'm currently working on was directly related to what I did in my PhD. So a question that came up during my PhD that I could not resolve because the models that we used were too simple. So I've now, the kind of computational modeling that I'm doing now is more advanced than what I did in my PhD. And in order to do that, I needed to get some help from the particular PI that I wanted to work with, that he had a particular research methodology that I wanted to use to answer these questions about how gases move through volcanic systems. So I wanted to do an independent research project. Kind of related to what was said before about having a bottom-up approach. So I had an idea and I wanted to pursue it. On another level though, I also wanted, since it was towards the end of my PhD and I wanted to figure out what was next, this was a good opportunity for me to just sit down and write a research proposal, even though I kind of thought that I wouldn't get it because I heard that it was very competitive and that people who got it were like really much more prominent in their fields than I was at that time. So I thought this was a good opportunity for me to just sit down, write my postdoc research proposal, which I could then use for other applications for a postdoc fellowship. Of course, it is a well-recognized fellowship. It's highly competitive. it's well looked upon when you later want to apply for a career as an academic or research scientist, which is my eventual goal. My research is mostly computational based, and the MSCA Postdoc Fellowship has really generous funding for that kind of research. I'm not so sure about lab-based or analytical techniques, and you'll have to ask some other fellows about that. On a personal level, though, I also wanted to move to Europe and explore a new place, because I lived prior to this, I lived in the US for about a decade, and I was kind of looking for a new experience. So how I established a partnership with my European host. So actually, I already knew the PI that I was going to work with because I was familiar with his research. He was in fact a postdoc at Stanford while I was a PhD student, so we knew each other pretty well already. That being said, though, I had talked to some other PIs about potentially doing some other projects, and they also encouraged me to apply for the MSCA, but I decided not to go with that. So just to reiterate that you really want to reach out to the PI that you want to work with, the supervisor that you want to work with. And they are usually generally very happy to support you because you are taking the initiative to get funding for yourself. The other thing is that, so I'm now at the University of Glasgow. During the writing process, I got a lot of help from their grant writing office. So they shared, my PI and I reached out to the grant writing office, and they shared the application format, example proposals, and not just example proposals, but also the evaluations, which were very helpful to see like what how the proposals were rated, and like what were the shortcomings of that proposal that we could address in our own proposal. There's in the part B2, there's some standard beneficiary information like, oh, like what office will you be in, or like what labs are there, or what's the ranking of the university, and that's what the university can provide for you. And then also some general advice about templates, you know, how to format your references. So that was very helpful. I will say that I did all of this in about a month and a half, because I decided pretty late to apply to this. I definitely suggest starting earlier. The reason why I started late was because I thought, as I said before, I thought it was too like competitive for me, so I didn't really want to apply, but eventually just decided that I should just give it a go.
Thank you.
So,
if you don't mind me interrupting you, I think we keep the second part maybe for the Q&A session. So we've already heard, you know, you can get a lot of support from the research support officers at the host institution, and we'll come back to Yishi in a minute. Maybe we will invite our next speaker now. I'll give the honors over to my colleague Thomas.
Thank you very much, Susanne. I would like to invite Dr. Chungyu Lee to share his experience, his testimonies with us. Dr. Chungyu Lee received his PhD in computer science, in computer engineering from the University of Tennessee in 2012. He's currently a research fellow at Queen's University in Belfast. His research background includes numerical linear algebra, among others. He was also affiliated with the University of Sydney, and he received his MSCA individual fellowship in 2018. Without further delay, Dr. Lee, the floor is yours. If you can share with you our experience in more or less 5 minutes, we appreciate it. Thank you. You have to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. Or I will unmute you.
Thank you, Thomas, for your introductions. And hello, everyone. And I'm honored to make a short speech about my Mercury Fellowship experience. And I received a Mercury Fellowship in 2018. And I'm born in South Korea, but obtained a PhD degree from USA. And after obtaining a PhD, and I was working as a postdoc at Australia, and now I'm working as a postdoc at UK. So basically, I kind of have a transcontinental research experience, Asia, America, Oceania, and Europe. And my research background, as Thomas introduced, includes linear algebra, artificial intelligence, and computing systems. So then, okay, then let me talk about what my Mercury proposal is about. So my project title was Energy Efficient Transportation Techniques for Linear System Solvers. So project acronym is ENTRANCE. So at the time, I thought that this acronym ENTRANCE was good because it is like an entrance to a good place. So it seems like I like the word trans somewhere inside me. So my project was about seeking the energy savings for linear system applications. Since as you see it in the figure, since linear system applications are used everywhere in our daily life, so saving energy for linear systems is expected to contribute to environment, humanity, and economy as well. So such a wider impact discretion might be important in Mercury Fellows proposal. That's what I think. And also, even though my proposal is about computations, my proposal's aim was not restricted to the computer society. And my proposal had a kind of ambitious goal, linking the contribution to environment, humanity, and economy. So during the fellowship, I published several world-leading journals and in computer system and artificial intelligence communities. And thanks to research experience from Mercury Fellowship, and now I'm planning a more ambitious research proposal regarding artificial intelligence. And back in 2017, and I was working as a postdoc at UK when I tried to write a proposal for the Mercury Fellowship. So my supervisor suggested me to write a Mercury Fellowship proposal. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't expect that much that my proposal could be successful, because I heard that the Mercury Fellowship was really competitive, and it was considered as one of the most prestigious doctoral fellowships in Europe. So I thought that it would be a great experience for me just to try to write a research proposal for such a prestigious fellowship. So I decided to try to do my best on it anyway, because I thought that I could get valuable experience, even though it could not be successful. So I thought it would definitely be helpful for my research career development, whether it would be successful or not. And if it would be successful, then I knew that the fellowship allowed me to do independent research, so I could improve my leadership skills. So for more ambitious interdisciplinary research projects. So plus, Mercury Fellowship provides the fellow with a higher payment as well. So therefore, I decided to apply for it. So regarding the connection to Europe for the fellowship, I was lucky since I was working in one of the academic institutes in Europe at the time, the Queen's University Belfast at UK. So my supervisor suggested me to write a proposal at the time. So that is how I established my partnership for Mercury Fellowship to Europe. And then finally, for the applications advice, I think that the most important advice from my experience is that you need to go through many iterations to improve your proposal between you and your PI. And when I wrote my Mercury proposal in 2017, my PI and I were refining proposal every day together. I think this helps a lot to improve the proposal according to Mercury proposal guideline, because they are going to provide with the templates, and then I strongly advise you that to follow the template and then address every single point if it's possible. And secondly, the Mercury Fellowship adopts a point-based system. So in 2017 call, I'm still in the 2021 from the presentation. So 50% is assigned to excellence of the proposal, and 30% is assigned to the impact, and 20% is assigned to the implementation plan for your proposal. So your proposal should address all those three perspectives in kind of balanced way. And finally, for your proposed topic, I recommend you to choosing your topic based on your expertise rather than the hot topics. For example, the research proposal should include specific aims, sort of a quantifiable aims. I think that if you write a proposal outside your area, then it'll be less probable for your proposal to be specific and feasible. So it'll be less successful. Therefore, I recommend you choosing the topic based on your expertise. And that's it. And good luck on your proposal. And thank you very much for your listening to my speech.
Yes, and our next speaker, maybe Judith, would you like to do us the honor to introduce our next fellow?
Good morning to those of you in Europe again, and good evening to those of you who are in Asia. I would like to introduce our next panelist, Dr. Norbert Kavashi, and he is a senior researcher at the Fukushima Quantum Science Technology Institute, and he's worked for 10 years in the Chiba Institute for National Institutes for Quantum and Radiological Science and Technology. So Norbert, if you would like to give a very brief presentation about your work and about how you applied for the MSCA scholarship that the grant that you are about to take up in Slovenia, will be most grateful. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Norbert?
Thank you very much, Judith. Okay, considering because time is very short, I think my exact work is not really important. What I think is important, so how to find a host or how to find a host institution. So for this, I think the best way to visit conferences and just see who is on the same topic what you are doing, and just try to make a contact. And after that, just try to introduce your research idea, what you would like to do in the Europe. And if you are lucky and you have kind of sympathy between two of you, so maybe a kind of connection or something can happen. No, I know it's quite complicated because of the coronavirus, so you cannot visit personally conferences, but also there are many opportunities to visit online conferences. So I just recommend to join online conferences, and if you can find somebody who just present a very interesting work or something what is also on your field, just try to get a contact and hope it will work. But to be honest, if you just want to submit your application this year, I think it's a little bit late to find a host, but okay, you can try. And the other thing, what I think is very important, to have a really good research idea, what you want to do. And but you should find a balance, because this fellowship only for 2 years, so you cannot expect just totally change everything just get a really something big true on the field. But some solid idea, it's important, and also need a correct plan how you will accomplish this during 2 years. And yeah, and okay, what is more important? You did question?
Yes, if you could actually talk about the process of basically having the conversation with the Slovenian Institute. So what was the initial step? You contacted them or they contacted you? And just one sentence about how long it actually took for you to
okay, so I contacted
the contact.
I contacted with them because before that I had the idea. I just selected some countries where I really would like to go. That in this case it was Poland and Slovenia. And in Slovenia, it's a quite small country, and on my field there was only one research institute. So I knew somebody from this research institute because of my former work, and also because of some conference meetings. So after that, I just get the information somebody just on my another topic, and I just asked them to introduce me. So we get the contact, and after that, personally, I visited them and I visited the laboratory. So I personally saw the laboratory, saw the instrumentation, and get the idea what really we can do. But no, because of the COVID, this is quite complicated or almost impossible. But if you are lucky and can find somebody who can help you and maybe introduce the laboratory using a camera, that is also could be very helpful. So, but after that, the institute was quite helpful because you know, this is a high prestige fellowship, so everybody will support you, and everybody really will like that you will be successful in this application and with the procedure. So otherwise, it's my opinion is quite positive.
Thank you, Norbert. In the meantime, we are
Okay.
Running a bit late, so I'm sorry to have to cut you short. But
okay.
basically what's happening at the moment is that we are trying to fit in our last fellow. So Augusto.
Okay, thank you, Judith.
Is raising his hand still. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for you to get your answer. And we have one more fellow. So dear colleagues.
Yes, thank you, Judith. So our final fellow is Dr. Anurag Krishna. He is joining us from Lausanne, where he works as an MSCA Fellow at EPFL. He is the holder of a PhD from NTU here in Singapore, Nanyang Technological University, after which he worked in France at a CNRS lab. And Anurag has also kindly agreed to just briefly share with us his advice for potential applicants. You know, what are the key aspects that they should look out for when preparing an application? Anurag, if you would like to just briefly share your advice with our attendees as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm Anurag Krishna. I'm a Marie Curie Fellow in Lausanne, and you can see it's a very beautiful city and a very nice campus along the Lake Geneva. So just to give my background, I mean, my background is in photovoltaics, that is solar cell. So I did my PhD in NTU Singapore, and then I moved briefly to get new experiences in the new continent and to France in one of the CNRS labs. And when I moved there, I heard about this fellowship from the professor there. And then I contacted a professor in EPFL for the fellowship because they are like the top group in this field. So yeah, so that's my journey, and I always wanted to work with them. So that was my motivation. Yeah. And especially one of the scientists, you might find him, Michael Gretzel. He's the #1 scientist across all the field in terms of citations and all the parameters. So it was no brainer for me to work with him. So yeah, so of course the fellowship is very prestigious, and you have opportunity to work with the research group of your choice, and then you can have an experience to do independent project because you are the PI of the project. And of course, these kind of fellowships help you to excel in career. So you can fast track your career, and you can write after this more grants like European Research Council starting grant and these kind of grants. And then how did I initiate? This is also the common question that people are asking. So my host laboratory is the leader in the field. So it was no brainer to contact them. I also know the host before. I mean, we met in a few conferences. He used to often visit Singapore as well. He also visited our laboratory. So I was in kind of contact with him. So I contacted him with my CV and brief idea of the proposal. And then we started talking, and we had a very nice proposal. Yeah, so the advice, the most important thing, the mobility has to be justified. Why you want to move to this lab, okay? So I see in Marie Curie Fellowship, you have this sort of knowledge transfer and this complementary knowledge transfer where you transfer some knowledge to the host and you gain something from the host. So be careful, I mean, to choose the right host where you can learn something new and that can help your career. And while for proposal writing, I mean, express your idea in a very simple way. Try to generate novel ideas. And even if it is high risk, it doesn't matter because novel ideas are always appreciated, even if it fails. And express your idea in simplest way possible in terms of writing. And just one tip, use graphic and tables wherever possible. I mean, don't put too much text in your proposal. As a reviewer, I mean, I'm also reviewing now proposals for different agencies, and it can become tiring sometimes to see too much text. So be creative, you know, think new ideas to express your ideas, and also focus on section 2 and 3, that is implementation and impact. As the first section, excellence. So the scientific part is only 50%. So you have to also focus on these two sections and also be innovative and make a nice plan for implementation of your project. And yeah, make good deliverables, good milestones, and so that they're convincing and also reasonable and possible practically. Yeah, so that's from my side. I will be more than happy to answer any questions that the participants have, and all the best, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think, as you said, all the fellows have already answered quite a few questions. Now, if I could invite all the fellows to please switch on their cameras. And we may be a little bit over time, but I think this is such an important and interesting session that we'll just have a few more minutes for you to ask your questions. Now I hand over to Tomasz and Judith to just manage the last few minutes of our Q&A.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we are behind the schedule, but if there is any question to a particular fellow or to all fellows, something that was not covered yet, please feel free to either use Q&A box or chat. We will, or raise your hand, we will address this question to our fellows. Please use them as they are with us. They're very busy guys.
Yes, and I think we would all appreciate if you could maybe ask more general questions that could actually be relevant to everyone. So this is something that we would like to emphasize. With the particular individual questions, we could actually answer them at a later stage. So please try to stick to more general questions that would be of interest to all our attendees.
I don't see any, so I think you did. We could conclude the session.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would have asked just before we close, if you were to summarize just in 3 sentences, what is your key message to the applicants? Because as Judith and Tomasz and Jenny were saying at the beginning, of course, what we want more researchers from our regions to apply. And we know this is a competitive funding scheme. We know the success rate may not be very high, but as we've heard from these fellows, it is a fabulous career opportunity. You get to work with the chosen researchers, the best researchers, as Anurag said, in your field. You get to develop your own research project. You get to spend 2 years at an institution of your choice. So for our 4 fellows, what is your final word of advice or encouragement to anyone who's listening right now? Maybe if we start with Dr. Wang, what is your key message?
Yeah, my key message is that the success rate may not be high, but it's definitely 0 if you don't apply. And just one other thing is that the publication record helps, but it's not the main criterion. The main criterion is a well-crafted, well-explained project.
Thank you, Yingxi. That's great advice. Dr. Lee, what is your key message to anyone maybe joining us from Korea and they're still a little bit hesitant?
Yes, actually, yeah, as I said before, actually, I didn't expect that much about my proposal would be successful. So thing is, this is very prestigious proposal. So even though it's not successful, you can learn how they are won. I mean, what prestigious proposals actually want to have for the research, for great research. So it is anyway, it is beneficial. I mean, just to try for your research career development. So I strongly recommend you to try anyway. I mean, so for such great opportunity, Molecular Fellowship.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. So the message there is, if you don't try, you will never know. And as we've heard from Dr. Lee, the trial itself is also an experience. It's a learning experience, and you can reapply next year. So that is always something to consider. Now, Dr. Kavasi, you're just sitting on your packed bags, I believe, moving to Slovenia. What is your final word of advice to anyone who might want to follow in your footsteps? Your microphone is off. Your microphone is off. You need to switch it on.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so this is a very positive things, very important. So just never give up, even though if you are not successful in the first, second, or third year, just try again. So never give up, and just try to improve your publication list, become stronger, and also try to improve your research idea or research proposal. And if you are lucky and you can find a good host, so I think the host also can help you, just showing your weak points, and also the host really can help you have to really can prepare really perfect or almost perfect research idea or research proposal. So another key point is the host. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then the final word to Dr. Krishna. You've already had a fabulous presentation. Now, what is your final advice maybe for anyone who wants to consider this?
Yeah, my advice would be, in particular, people coming from Asia. I mean, just don't be worried that success rate is low. Try. I mean, novel and good ideas are always accepted. And with my personal experience, When I was in NTU, I was also not that confident. But after coming here, I see that, I mean, we are doing quite well in Singapore, I would say. So go ahead, try your ideas, write a proposal, and let's see what happens. You know, you will always learn something from this whole process. Yeah. So
just to encourage the 88 of you who are remaining in the room for this fellowship, if you are not funded by the MSCA, but there's actually what you call as the seal of excellence. So if you have a proposal that gets this seal of excellence, it gives like this mark for the other funding agencies to fund you instead. So it's not just, you know, the Marie Curie, but you have also other funding agencies from the member states or from other institutions that would take this great idea of yours. So please be encouraged with that. Thank you, Susanna.
And now we really have to come to an end. First of all, before I close, let me remind all of you, we will share the slides that have been presented today. You will also receive a recording of this session, and there is lots and lots of advice and support on the EURAXES portal. Don't worry about it. You will get a link in the follow-up email that you can then search, for example, for potential hosts in Europe, because we have a dedicated hosting portal on our website where European institutions are actively looking for fellows from across the world to host them as MSCA funded postdocs. Also mark your calendars. We will have a proposal writing webinar on the 12th of May at the same time. So all of you that are really interested now and you want to take this further, do join us again on the 12th of May, where we'll give you in-depth advice on how to draft this proposal so that successfully, hopefully, next year, you'll be joining us as grantees. Now with this, I think thank you to all the grantees. Please go back and do your wonderful research. It was fabulous for you to share your time and expertise with us and with all our participants today. Everyone who joined us, thanks so much for staying with us, and we look forward to seeing you again for a future EURAXES webinar. So with this, everybody have a fabulous day, fabulous evening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you all.
Hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, fellows. Thank you so much. Please follow our social media accounts. Thank you.